Every 5 seconds, a football field of fertile soil disappears from the earth. Not drought, not flooding, not climate change directly. Just gone. Eroded, degraded. Turned from living earth into something closer to sand. 95% of everything you eat depends on healthy soil. Every vegetable, every piece of meat, every grain of rice, every cup of coffee. All of it starts in the ground. 52% of the world's soil is already degraded. If current rates continue, 90% will be degraded by 2050, in 60 years, within the lifetime of children born today. And it takes nature 1,000 years to form just 2 to 3 centimeters of topsoil. What we are destroying in decades takes a millennium to replace. This is the most undercovered crisis in the world, and it is already affecting the price of everything you eat. Chapter 1. How did we get here? To understand the soil crisis, you first need to understand what soil actually is. Healthy topsoil is not dirt. It is one of the most complex living ecosystems on Earth. A single teaspoon contains more microorganisms than there are people on the planet. Bacteria, fungi, nematodes, and earthworms working together in a system that took millions of years to develop. That system is what turns dead minerals into food. Destroy it, and the soil becomes biologically dead. And that is exactly what industrial agriculture has been doing for a century. When you grow the same crop on the same land year after year, which is how most of the world's food is produced, the soil's microbial diversity collapses. When you mechanically plow the ground before every planting season, which is standard practice on most farms, you break up the fungal networks that hold the soil structure together. When you spray chemical pesticides and herbicides to protect the crop, you kill the organisms that make the soil alive in the first place. The result is a feedback loop that is almost impossible to exit once it starts. Degraded soil produces less food, so farmers use more fertilizer to compensate. More fertilizer further damages the microbial ecosystem. More damage means more fertilizer next season. The soil produces the same yield for a while, but only because it is being kept on life support by fossil fuel-derived chemicals. Remove the chemicals and nothing grows. This is happening on roughly half the agricultural land on Earth. Right now. Chapter 2. The civilizational pattern. What makes this crisis genuinely alarming is that it has happened before, and the civilizations that let it happen didn't recover. Ancient Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, the place where writing and mathematics and urban life were invented, collapsed partly because its intensive irrigation practices slowly salinized the soil until crops could no longer grow. The Roman Empire's agricultural decline preceded its political collapse by generations. The Dust Bowl of the 1930s, when American prairie topsoil turned to dust storms that buried entire towns, was not a natural disaster. It was the direct result of a decade of intensive plowing that destroyed the deep grass root systems that had held the Great Plains together for thousands of years. The pattern is consistent across history. Every civilization that has destroyed its soil has eventually collapsed. Not overnight, not dramatically. Gradually, through rising food prices, declining agricultural output, and the political instability that follows when people cannot eat. We are the first civilization to have done this globally, simultaneously, at industrial scale, with no frontier left to move to when the current land runs out. Chapter 3. The food price connection. The consequences are not hypothetical. They are already showing up in grocery bills around the world. Most people just have not connected the dots. Land degradation will reduce global food productivity by 12% within 25 years. Food prices are projected to rise 30% as a direct result. Not because of monetary inflation, not because of supply chain disruption, because the ground that grows the food is getting measurably worse at growing food, and the cost of compensating with chemicals, irrigation, and inputs is being passed to consumers. In severely affected areas, crop yields have already dropped by up to 50%. Farmers are applying more fertilizer to maintain output, which adds cost, while the underlying soil continues to degrade. The fertilizer masks the problem without solving it. When fertilizer prices spike, as they did after Russia's invasion of Ukraine disrupted global supply chains, the vulnerability of this system becomes suddenly visible. The total impact of soil degradation could reach $23 trillion in losses by 2050. That is roughly the size of the entire United States economy in accumulated losses from one crisis that mainstream financial media barely covers. Chapter 4. The Solutions and Investment Case. The soil crisis is a farming practices problem, and farming practices can change faster than most people realize when the economics make it necessary. Regenerative agriculture rebuilds rather than depletes soil. Cover cropping returns organic matter to the ground. No-till farming eliminates the mechanical disruption that breaks up fungal networks. Crop rotation restores the biological balance that monocultures destroy. These are not experimental techniques. They are proven practices that can rebuild degraded soil in 5 to 10 years. The challenge is that they require farmers to accept lower short-term yields to restore long-term soil health, and most farming economics do not reward that trade-off. That is where investment comes in. Pivot Bio has developed microbial alternatives to synthetic nitrogen fertilizer, reducing chemical inputs while maintaining yields. Indigo Agriculture maps soil microbiomes and develops biological crop treatments that work with the soil ecosystem rather than against it. These are early-stage, high-risk companies, but they are targeting a $400 billion annual problem with a $23 trillion long-term price tag. The most defensive play is farmland itself. As fertile soil becomes scarcer, its value increases regardless of commodity prices or interest rates. Bill Gates is the largest private farmland owner in the United States. That is not a coincidence. Farmland has been one of the best inflation-protected assets in modern history, and it becomes more valuable every year that productive soil becomes rarer. Every 5 seconds, a football field of fertile soil disappears. Ancient Mesopotamia lost its soil and became desert. The Roman Empire lost its soil and declined. The American Great Plains nearly lost its soil in a decade of bad farming decisions. We are doing all of that, globally, simultaneously, at a scale those civilizations never approached. 52% of the world's soil is already degraded. 95% of our food depends on healthy soil. We need to feed 2 billion more people by 2050 on ground that is getting worse every year. The water crisis gets headlines. The chip shortage gets headlines. The soil crisis, the one that determines whether civilization can actually feed itself, gets nothing. That gap between the scale of the problem and the attention it receives is exactly where long-term investment opportunities are born. If you want to understand how resource scarcity creates investment opportunities, check out my complete investing masterclass. Link in the description.